Are now live. So, hey everyone. Um, Hope you are all doing well. Thank you to another round of whatever we're going to be talking about. Thanks for everyone who added input, joined by the awesome Lisa. And yeah, we're going to be talking things.
In the
So,
chat, it just says sending messages is only supported for the host. So I don't know if that's something everyone can't partake in, but I can't partake in it. So I'm not sure. Oh no,
we'll see how
it's
it
just
goes.
me blocked from using the chat because David McKenzie can use it. So basically what's going to happen now is you can all troll me on here and I can't defend myself. So great.
There we go. Yeah. So the reason why it pulls in the chat from other things. So we are streaming to Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I think if I'm correct. So it should pull in the chat from all three of those. We'll see how it goes. And as Lisa says, you can spam her. She's got no way of responding. I'll figure that out for the next one. I don't know why you can't chat. But yeah, thanks for joining. Lisa, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. I'm here. And it didn't look like I was going to come back because the last one, in case you didn't see, I just had a whole ending of the podcast was just people trolling me about pineapple on pizza, something about battered Mars bars, which apparently is a thing. And like, it just descended into like a whole thing.
It's a thing in Edinburgh, I think it is. But yeah,
No.
deep fried Mars bars.
No.
It's a thing.
It is sadly a thing.
Yeah. So we have an agenda, which
We do have an agenda.
Something we had last time, but it's not as it wasn't as structured as this time. So we're moving up.
Yeah, we are.
Oh God, I don't have an OnlyFans, Dave. Please. Cool.
I'm gonna just quickly grab another jumper. I'll be 2 seconds and I'll be back. I appreciate that's not very convenient, but I'm cold. 2 seconds.
So, well, Lisa's going. We've got a bunch of people, so thanks again to everyone who came along and joined. Oh, that was quick.
Okay, I've got my Arctic gear on. We're good to go.
Nice. When are you headed to the Arctic?
No, I'm just in Bristol. I'm just really not suited to cold weather at all. So,
yeah, it's miserable. Great. Anyway, so the first one we have on our agenda is responsibility of influencers when they promote a product. You want to kick this one off, Lisa?
Yeah, so the reason I wanted to put this on the agenda actually was because a lot of crypto influencers, which I just realized are called finfluencers. It's like a thing. They're called finfluencers. It's horrible. But a lot of them have come under fire because what they do is they talk about a scheme or an NFT, promote it, it ends up being a scam or a rug pull or something ridiculous, or it just doesn't work. And people lose money and they come under fire for it. And people were saying to me, oh, these influencers ought to be held to account and should be held responsible for the products they promote. And I thought, yes, but how is that different to anywhere else? Because I've watched a few things recently, for example, a gaming tutorial on some game. And this guy made this YouTube video where he was going to do a walkthrough of the game. And what it actually was a review of the laptop that he'd been given by the company that made the laptop, that he tried to sneak in as a game review. And it got me thinking, because you do see it in cyber, people being paid by vendors or whatever to promote products, promote VPNs, promote whatever. And I think there's a real problem
hoping that's
problem is to promoting.
oh, you there, Lisa?
Yeah,
We seem to have had technical issues. I don't know if it was my side or your side, but
she didn't pay the vendor apparently.
oh, okay. So you want to you were talking about, I think there were particular problems with paying a vendor paying someone. So
Yeah, no, I just think
I know,
that really, I think there's two things. I think if a vendor pays you, you have a responsibility for the product. And if you promote it, you have a responsibility. That's just what it is. If it doesn't work out, that's also on you. But I also think that if you get given a product by a vendor for free to write a review on it, that you have to disclose that, because you're not going to write this is absolutely crap, because the vendor is never going to give you that product again.
oh, interesting you mentioned that, because I think there were some celebrities in the US who got done for that very exact thing. They were promoting a crypto, I forgot which one, and they didn't disclose that they were actually being paid to do that. And as a result, they were fined. Um, and I entirely agree. Like, there's nothing wrong with promoting a product, or even, well, great promoting a product if you believe in it. There's nothing wrong promoting a product if you've been paid in it, but you have to be very clear and upfront that, hey, I have a vested interest to promote this product because there's a financial remuneration or reward for me. I think that is acceptable as long as it's clear, because then whoever's listening to that message can then apply their own kind of scrutiny and whatever, and they can have a better understanding where it's coming from. So I entirely agree. I think within this industry, especially in security, the problem that we have, and it's probably even things like crypto and that kind of thing, is it's very technical, and many people don't understand the technical details. So it's very easy to pull the wool over someone's eyes. Just today, I in fact put a tweet where paying a service for DDoS, it takes one EC2 instance to bring the site down. Yeah. So it's things like that which worry me. Is yeah, if we have people promoting things and they're not being upfront and honest about it, is very easy to get away with it, unfortunately. And I saw some names there, and I really don't want to mention that person by name, because we don't want to. I think one thing as well is we create a lot of drama around things, and certain people. I think everyone knows who I'm talking about, but I don't want to mention. And I I think that's a problem, because yes, we're trying to hold them to account, but at the same time, we're providing them a platform for them to carry on dishing out the misinformation, or what's the word? It's not misinformation. It's disinformation. So there's actual difference between the two. But they're intentionally misleading people. I think, yeah. I don't know what your thoughts on that, Lisa.
Yeah, I just was reading David's comment in the chat, and I agree that actually, like, the difference with adverts is, like he said, you know it's an ad, you know those actors or actresses are being paid to do this advert. But what the difference is with influencers is that often they're saying, I use this, it's great, this diet pill works, this trainer is amazing, or this NFT is going to make you loads of money, or this VPN is whatever. And so what they're doing isn't saying, oh, here's me acting in an advert. It's them saying, I use it, it's excellent, it's going to change your life. And to a lot of people who don't understand things, they buy that. And so therefore, I think also one of the things that bugs me the most is influencers who use a link or they'll use a code, and that's so that they can measure the number of people they convert, right, to the product. So therefore, you are interested in getting the maximum number of your followers to buy this thing. So then to turn around and say you don't have any responsibility because you just were naive and didn't look into it, I just don't think is good enough. And we do have regulation, but then if it was working, you wouldn't see these things happening still.
Yeah, I think the regulation is very difficult because unless it's massive, like that one with I think Sol pointed out. So thank you. Where it was significant, a huge amount of money. The regulators aren't going to worry about some person probably gaining $10 a link or something like that. That's just not probably not going to scale and worth the time investing. But it does have a real impact on people. They could be spending a few $100s on something that provides them no value.
Yeah.
Especially in our industry, you don't want to buy a product that says, "Yeah, I'm going to solve all your problems," and you're thinking, "Great, 100% secure," and then next thing, woof, you get attacked because the product's actually garbage. So yeah, it's a real problem, and unfortunately, I don't know what the solution is. Like, I know there's, as mentioned before, the whole industry call out. We should certainly call out people, but I think to a degree, as I mentioned, like if we do too much, then it becomes a platform for them.
Yeah.
The person is still very popular outside the different things, and they get a lot of attention as a result. So is the case that we call them out, and if they don't listen, just ignore them? I I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really difficult. I think, especially, it becomes really problematic in the crypto space only because, in my opinion, the value is so much in comparison. So, like, if someone says buy this VPN, they're probably spending like what, €50 maybe, or whatever it is, nothing massive. Pair of trainers, maybe €200, whatever. But the people in the crypto space are parting with like £200,000, like where they've remortgaged their house because they believe in this project. And so that's why it becomes so problematic in the crypto space. But actually, the problem is exactly the same as we see in climbing, in dieting, in fitness, in all aspects of online life. It's just that it's a few more zeros.
Yeah, that's very true. It's touching on the very thing that people have money. So yeah, I don't know what the answer is. Just maybe I think one of the answers is awareness and education, and that letting people know, like, hey, crypto's great, but it comes with many risks.
Nah, no, it's fine.
I'm loving it at the moment. Like, Dodge has gone up. My crypto's like looking healthy for once. It's great. Till a year's time when it just goes again. But yeah, no, but it is like you've seen so many stories of people putting in our savings and that into it, and it is sad. Like, thinking that they're going to have quick wins and all this. And the reality is, your chances of having a quick win are a lot lower than losing it all. So it's that awareness, it's that education.
But I think it also
really
makes like reviews really difficult. So when I've been looking for like anything, actually, like a new pair of shoes to any product I might want to buy, it actually makes it really difficult to find a review that you can read and trust, because you start reading the review and then they're like, oh, well, Nike gave me these shoes, or whatever, Apple gave me this phone. And then you're like, well, now the review doesn't count for anything. And actually, to find a review where the person has legitimately bought it out with their own money and then reviewed it honestly, really difficult.
So Amazon, kudos to them that they do show you someone who's bought it out of their own
Yeah.
money versus someone. But what I actually do is I hardly ever look at the positive reviews. I always go for the negative reviews, because someone's a lot less likely to give a negative review because they've been paid versus someone being paid. So
Yeah.
you will probably get a stronger, a more direct, or more objective is maybe a word, uh, sense of things. And I even do it for companies. If I'm looking for another job, I don't go look at, oh, look at how great this company is. They provide free food and games room and all this stuff. I go look at the negative reviews because that shows you a lot about the company culture.
Yeah, and then
It
the
should.
ones that are being paid or whatever, the negative reviews for it are like this jacket. Oh, if anything, it's just a bit too comfortable. Do you know what I mean? It's like that would be my biggest negative. It's just almost too comfortable. You're like, okay, yeah, that's a great negative. Well done.
Oh, it's terrible, terrible. But that's my advice for people if they're looking for reviews, and I go straight to the negative. It sounds actually pretty bad when you say, "Oh, just focus on the negatives. Don't look at anything positives." but but yeah, it in my opinion, it's the way you're probably going to get the most objective. And so at the same time, I think it's pretty hard to do a lot of negative reviews. So you might have someone as a competitor trying to power with a lot of false negative reviews, but I think by and large those should come across fairly easily. Um, so yeah, it's it's interesting because even Amazon's faced issues. I think they kicked off a couple of suppliers because they had fake reviews on them as well. So it interesting times, very difficult. How did they do it back in the day when they didn't have things like internet?
Just better. Just everything was better. But they didn't
Just
have
going
the
to
metaverse, and we're all very thankful for the metaverse, aren't
uh,
we? Every single one of us. It's changed
yeah.
our lives.
Who was Disney that dropped their plans for the metaverse? Yeah, yeah. Oh, they bad decision on their behalf. They don't know what they're missing out on. They could have captured all what 10 of those people that joined or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think there was 30 at the maximum that ever used it at any one time.
Yeah, it's I, I don't understand what they're thinking. Like VR, the thing, it's never exploded. 3D TVs became a thing, went away, came back, and then yeah, metaverse.
Yeah.
Anyway, we shall see. So
What was the next topic we had lined up?
updates really that important? Yes, next topic.
Oh, the fights though that we have about updates. I mean, the fights that we have as a community about updates, let alone then communicating that outside of cyber. Do I think that updates always need to be done? Yes. I don't think anyone is going to sit here and say that no, you shouldn't do updates, you should ignore them. But I did a poll asking like how long people would delay an update on an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever. And the number of people who said a month was really shocking to me. I would never delay an update by a month.
I would say it depends, right? If you're talking a security update, yes, update straight away. But I can understand if it's a major update. So you're talking like Windows 10 to Windows 11 or
Yeah,
iOS 15 to iOS 16. Generally, what happens is those older versions are supported and patched, so apply those updates. But you get I think it's good to separate between security updates and feature updates.
sure.
So the feature updates, yes, there are bugs around in that. And I'm not saying there aren't bugs around security updates, but you're a lot more likely to get a bug around a feature update, those big updates versus security patching. And that's where I think a lot of friction has happened. Like let's not beat around the bush. Microsoft haven't had a very good track record when it comes to security updates and breaking things, and that's obviously not a good thing. It doesn't help a cause. But by and large, most people, even with all of that, are still not affected. I can't even recall if I've ever been affected by any of those issues Microsoft
Mm-hmm.
has had with updates. Yes, it might be luck, but the the issues that are faced from an update are going to be far less impactful than the issues they're going to face from a breach.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also got people, as I said, like you got those two updates, and then you get people who compound the two, like, oh yeah, the Windows 11, don't ever install update because it's a disaster, and yeah, all your updates are a disaster. Meanwhile, not actually looking at, the security updates for Windows 10, just ticking over, carrying on. So yeah, and then the question is, how quickly do you install those updates? And that's where I think the feature one, I know a lot of people prefer to wait, see it out, let the bugs run over for those big, massive updates. And I get that. I can understand that. But when it's a security one, especially when we know it's been actively targeted, let me know how Travel X got on with the attitude of, well, just install the update later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think like with all of these things, it's about balancing the risk, isn't it? Because it's like, okay, that the risk of this update being problematic is X, and the risk it's currently being actively exploited, and so therefore the risk of me not applying it is Y, and then balancing that out in a pragmatic way. So maybe it can't always be done in a uniform way, but I think certainly like for iPhones, for example, for your own personal devices, I really don't think there's a lot of justification for delaying beyond maybe a day or two, because to be honest, it's it's relatively easy if it goes wrong to back up, have everything restored from backup and be okay. So, but yeah, most of my friends who are not in cyber are just like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then when I say, look, it's really important, you should do it, there's this many security updates in the last Apple update or whatever, and they'll turn to me, they'll sort of say things. One of them said to me, people don't just sit around doing updates, Lisa. I was like, don't? That's weird.
Sit around trying to target people and steal their financial data. But yeah, I think it's again awareness issue and education, like making people aware, like why these updates are important. And like how little effort it really is. Like doing an iPhone update is not that. I'm not going to say it's like absolutely trivial, because you got to make sure your phone's charged and this and that. So that's a bit of a pain, but by and large, it's a lot less of a pain to do that than go, okay, now I have to phone my bank, cancel this account, do this, to sign up a credit rating, all of this kind of stuff. Um, it it's yeah, it's going to be a lot simpler.
And that's always the
What
case as well, because I was thinking about the Genesis marketplace that got taken down today or yesterday, actually. And a lot of the situation with the creds that were on there, I think there was like 80 million creds that were on there. But the problem, I think, is that a lot of that is reused passwords, right?
Yep.
So in a sense, by ignoring security advice, you're actually making the problem worse, which is then making our job harder, which is then making us get onto your back more for not doing the thing. And then you decide you're going to stick your feet in and say, no, I'm not going to do it. And then round and round and round we go. And the only people who get rich are lawyers. So it just seems like so many of the credentials were reused passwords. It's just infuriating to me when people don't do updates and they don't just do simple things which aren't massively complicated.
That's an interesting point. It's not even reused passwords. Go look at the top 10 list of passwords. It's the same ones over and over and over and over. So the message is clearly not getting through. It's just, I think it's human psyche, it's human nature. That, like, I've got a YubiKey fingerprint reader thing that I bought. I will get to it tomorrow. I'll get to it tomorrow. It's like 6 months later. I still haven't got to it. So I think that's one aspect. Like, there's always tomorrow. Things are happening so fast that people just delay things. Even if I had weak passwords, I know at one point I did reuse passwords. Oops, did I say that? many years ago. But I knew it was bad. I'm a security person. I know it's bad. And I kept on delaying it. So eventually I was just like, I've got to do it. I'm doing it. And yeah, I think there's that aspect, but there's also the, oh, who's going to target me attitude as well, um, which is probably even more worrisome in a way because they don't see the risk. Like even things like, okay, well, they're going to steal this stuff. Well, what does it matter to me? They're going to have my data, so who cares? And I realize that that could lead to this, to that, and then identity theft and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I had this conversation with someone the other day. They were talking about Instagram accounts and why would anyone hack my Instagram account? Because it's private. I don't have loads of followers. I'm not an influencer. Like, why would anyone? But I think the big thing people forget is that Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of those major social media platforms, they implemented a rule whereby when you create a new account, they'll quarantine it for a period of time, and then they'll apply its lowest rating, and then over time they'll give it a higher rating. And this is quite a recent thing, but the idea was to stop bot accounts and stock accounts and things like this, and it's been really, really effective. But the net effect of that is that now it's so difficult to get a stock account that's rated A or A plus or whatever they rate it, that it's actually easier to compromise someone's existing Instagram account, take over that Instagram account, and then use that to do whatever it was you were going to do. So that's why your Instagram account has a value, not because they think you're some influencer who has loads of money, but because it's an account that's legitimate, that they can now sneak past Instagram's AI detection system.
And the other danger of that is then your name gets dragged through the mud and associated with dodgy dealings. So yeah, it's something I wouldn't want my name associated with in any shape or form. So it's a very interesting thing to worry about. I've never actually seen or thought about that. So
I think the thing with all of this is it feeds into each other. That's the problem. So like someone's Instagram account is relatively worthless, but it helps attackers proliferate different things. It helps then feed the criminal ecosystem, which helps feed ransomware, which helps attack organizations, which help, et cetera, et cetera. None of it is in a silo. It's all interconnected. And so if everyone says, well, it's not my problem, then this is where we end up, where we are.
No, we could call it the dark web. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. That's terrible. But yeah, it is very true. Even when I'm doing like pen tests and that, like people are, oh, there's just that information. It's not important. Well, to an attacker, it may be very important because that one thing could lead to another, to another. So it's a very valid point. It could make all the difference down the line. So yeah. So updates, yeah. Update. I think one other thing to call out on updates, and I wish things like Apple would do a better job of this. I don't know why. There's such a delay between if you've got the automatic update set when the update's released versus the actual update automatically being applied. Because I think if that's done, that will make the adoption rates of updates a lot better. I mean, I always normally update it straight away as quickly as possible, but I don't know how long that delay is. It's not like we're not talking hours, we're talking days.
Yeah, it is days.
Longer. So I don't know why it takes so long. If anyone knows, let us know. But yeah, things like that. But other things that Apple are doing that should hopefully help as well is, I don't know if they were supposed to be doing that. I don't know if it's come out yet. I was dreaming. But some of the updates are being applied without having to restart the device. So that again should help with adoption. One of the things with people don't want to restart the device, it's a hassle. You got to close everything down, reopen everything. So if you can start doing updates that just seamlessly work in the background, that again will help with the adoption rates.
Speaking of things, not that Apple is at all sponsoring this, nor are they present on this. So this is a completely stupid thing to bring forward, but I feel I need to vocalize this. I think that the passcode on Apple iPhone, so I know you've got the Face ID, but let's just forget about Face ID for a second. The passcode to get in, it is then the same for keychain. So if people are using the password manager within the iOS operating system, the passcode's the same. So if someone could get into the phone to begin with, then they can access all the passwords. So what I think ought to be this situation is that you have 2 different passcodes, because otherwise you haven't really segmented it at all.
That's true. I would caveat that though is you would need physical access, right? You'd actually need access to the device, so that significantly raises it. But it's still a legitimate concern, and not being paid by them. You could use another password manager, such as 1Password. And I'm not being paid by them. I love their product. It's great. And there are other great products out there. Some others, not so much.
Naming no names.
I was going to name it, but then I don't think I need to name it. What it is. But one other thing, just touching on, now that you mentioned Apple and that, I think the updates are also important from a mobile perspective. When you're talking about Android and Apple, Android is getting its act together, but it really needs to start really getting its act together. I know people might say, "Oh, you're going to go for this vendor or whatever, like the Nexus or Pixel phones and that." But what did it for me, and the reason why I actually moved to Apple is the updates. I bought a flagship device. I wasn't getting the latest version. I wasn't getting security updates. I'm like, this is the flagship device. Why am I not getting these? I can go have an old iPhone, my iPhone X. Oh, they were still talking about like the iPhone X being supported on the later whatever version of what's it, 16 or 17 coming out of iOS. Like that's why I went to Apple, because I knew that the updates would be coming through. I bought a router. I paid quite a bit of money for that router. Never got updates. But check that out, and that's why I go into something like Ubiquiti, because I know I get the updates. So the other flip side to the updates is even getting the updates, which IoT, which is iOS, not IoT. Because many of these devices just simply don't get the appropriate updates.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a vendor problem as much as a people problem.
Definitely.
All right. Next one. What
Oh,
are
no,
the real
smiling.
risks?
What is the next one? I'm worried now.
What are the real risks of chatbots? AI, machine learning. It's going to take over all our jobs. We're going to be talking to a machine.
Look, do I think that, okay, like chatbots and LLMs, I really don't think are a massive security risk, right? A lot of people, when ChatGPT came out, and I'm not paid or sponsored by Microsoft, because clearly we started the podcast like this, and now I feel like we have to continue in this vein. But a lot of people said, oh, it's going to really help the hackers. It's going to help them. They're going to have they're going to be able to code. They're going to be able to write their malware in there. They're going to be able to write their phishing emails. And it's like, guys, they had no problem attacking us before ChatGPT. Like, they were nailing it. They were doing a really good job. They're not struggling. It's not like this holy grail that's come out and they're like, thank God this is even the scales. They were already miles ahead of us. So no, I don't really think it's going to make a fat lot of difference, to be perfectly honest, because I just don't think it will. From the privacy perspective, there are some concerns around it. But I think the big problem that society has with this is that they fundamentally misunderstand what they are and how they operate. And I think that is the biggest problem, to be honest, than anything else. One interesting thing that was raised that I did think was quite interesting was, are you ever going to read a blog written by a human again? Which I thought was quite an interesting question, because that's the perfect use case for a lot of these, in a sense, for the marketing and whatever, on company websites. And so I just don't see this big existential threat from them personally.
I think one area that do pose a threat is the misinformation. They're not accurate.
But Bard, and I'm not paid by Google, just throwing that out here, Bard fixes that because Bard puts hyperlinks of where it sourced its information. So when I tried Bard out the other week, I was really, really impressed with how it sourced it and it weighted each of the results. So ChatGPT, yes. Bard, who we're not sponsored by, no.
Do you not understand how humans work?
No, I'm not humans
human, humans don't go, oh, there's this bunch of information. Let me just go validate that information.
I do, but I'm also one of these people who spend all my days doing updates, apparently.
I think it's a society where we want all the information up and now. And you did rate, like, for instance, you rated, I think on the weekend, about people just reading headlines and not actually reading into the story. Like, for example, I think it was David, you did right. Who attended security? Well, I must have been like completely asleep or something. There was Troy Hunt was at security. Kevin Mickman was there as well. And yeah, a whole bunch of other people who I never saw once, but hey, Google Bard thought they were at security this year. So I think one of the risks is that people are going to take the information presented by these as the gospel, the truth. And yes, there may be links to go validate it further, but I think many people won't actually do that. They're just going to go, yep, the copy, paste, and in we go. I mean, we see this with the likes of things like Stack Overflow. Oh, I got the certificate error. Okay, yeah, do this. Job done. Great. Except for it's disabled certificate validation. And people just blindly copy that. Without
I guess that was what I was going to come back with, actually. Like, yes, I do agree that people probably aren't going to go and check the sources. But on Twitter, there are people in our community who were sharing an article that drove me absolutely mental last week. I almost completely lost it. And they were sharing it and writing, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my God, this is horrible. Have you seen this? They hadn't read the article, because if they had, they would have realized how misleading the headline was. And they were sharing it. So it's exactly the same thing. You don't need, the chatbot isn't necessarily adding or taking away from that. You're still doing that same behavior.
I don't disagree, but where I think it's going to become a problem is when people then use that as their blog post or whatever thing they're writing up. And then that becomes a lot more formal, where people think that's what they actually wrote, and it contains misinformation. It's not the only place. It's not going to be the end of the world, but it's just compounding to an existing problem already.
Are you suggesting that Capita wrote their initial comms on Friday through ChatGPT? It's an IT issue that we're contacting the NCSC and the ICO about, but for no reason at all. It's just an IT issue. Nothing to see, folks.
Just a slight blip. Just a slight blip on our system. We'll just contact them, just letting them know,
Yeah, everyone contacts their regulator for no reason whatsoever, just to have a chat. Everyone does it. I do it.
Yeah. Oh, my website's down. Better go contact the RCO. No particular reason. Just
call up, say hi.
Be cautious. Yeah, that is interesting. So why don't you go into a little bit of detail there, just in case anyone's not aware of what you're talking about?
About Capita.
Yes.
Okay, so Thursday, things went bad. And some of Capita's clients, they serve UK Gov, they serve council level, they serve lots of really big organizations. I mean, they're huge organization. Almost everyone must have heard of them. Friday morning, they put out a statement that said they were having IT issues. And this looked really weird for a number of reasons. The Guardian decided to run a story that said, are Capita having a cyber attack? Which then got picked up by the Times and a few others. I went on BBC Radio where they were asking me about it. And Capita just kept maintaining it was IT issues and that was it. They went quiet. There was no further comms whatsoever. They were very, very reluctant to be drawn on anything at all. But they were causing a lot of problems because payroll was down in companies, call centers were down in local government councils, things like this. So the ripple effect was massive. Monday morning, it turns out that they put a statement into the London Stock Exchange. They're obviously traded, I think they're a FTSE 100 company, so they have to report that kind of incident to the London Stock Exchange. So they put a notice on the London Stock Exchange that said they'd had a cyber incident without communicating to anybody else, just putting it on the London Stock Exchange. What they didn't realize, I think, was that most of the security researchers and irritating people like myself have Google alerts set up really fast when something like this happens. So as soon as the London Stock Exchange statement came up and went online, everyone saw it before they'd released comms about it. And so now it was like, oh, it's a cyber attack, but it was an IT issue, and it's still not fixed. Lots of they're saying that they're back online, but a lot of their clients aren't. So yeah, that's basically where we're at. Yeah, what not to do, basically.
Yeah, please don't use the word cyber, if it's not a security issue, because people associate cyber with cybersecurity, and you'll automatically get people going, "Oh, it's a security issue."
But look, I actually think at the very, very first thing. So let's say you have a huge, all your systems are down. You're seeing indicators of compromise that are maybe looking like ransomware, but you don't know, right? I would say at that point, it's fine to say you're having an IT issue that you're investigating. That's completely fine. No one disagrees with that being the first piece of comms that goes out. The problem is it becomes obvious faster than 4 days that you've had a malicious incident of some description, and to not put it out and to not clarify isn't okay. And actually, I think the big problem here is that the Capita security team will be working really, really hard to pull things back online. And the comms team have undermined that because they put out statements that were really not very good. And then the media spun their own story, which is what took over.
Yeah, and this is why I always think things like tabletops and that is incredibly important. So you can run through these things and understand who's doing what, who's communicating what, who vets that communication. Because you should have technical people vetting the communication because it may not be accurate. And that's the last thing you want to do when there's an incident. Communication in these situations is as important as the investigation itself, in my opinion, because it can cause such a negative perception. And rumors are very, 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 very bad, especially when you under stress.
And contrast that with Ferrari, who had their ransomware attack, I think, a week before Capita. Their comms were amazing. Their comms that they put out to their clients were really thorough. I really liked that they signed it off from the CEO, and the whole thing read like the CEO was talking. So it was saying like, I really apologize for this. I'm going to see that it's fixed. And then signed by the CEO, which I thought was a really nice touch, as opposed to saying, we as the faceless entity of Ferrari apologize. It's nice to have a human behind it. But they did a really good job. And no one is talking about Ferrari. Everyone's talking about Capita, but arguably Ferrari was a worse situation.
Yeah. I didn't follow the Ferrari thing too much, but from what I saw, it was good. And
are you sure you weren't in the data breach? Was your data? You must have had loads of data with Ferrari, with all the Ferraris you've bought.
What like dinky toy cars? Where can go vroom vroom vroom? It makes tons as a drive them around. Yeah, I wish.
It was the first data breach I think everybody wished they were in.
Yeah. Well, there's some smug security person like, yeah, my data's in there. Yeah. No, my data's definitely not in there.
No, mine either, sadly.
Yeah. But there was one in our market research SaaS supplier got breached a few days ago. Yeah, I saw something about that where Dutch people's details were stolen. Again, it looks like another case of they didn't say what was going on, and it's I don't know what goes through these companies' heads. Like, do they think that, oh, if we just brush it aside, no one will notice type thing, and it will just go away? If your company listening to this, please, please, please don't do that, because you're going to end up having it far worse. It will come out, and it will be far worse than what you expect. Just be open, transparent. Things happen. Breaches happen. They happen to the best of us. As long as you've been open and transparent and truthful about it, you'll be good. Not the best thing to happen, but they happen. And yeah, I just don't get it. It's the same sort of mentality when people go to companies and say, "Hey, we found this vulnerability," and they're like, "Sorry, can't hear you or see you. Don't know what you're talking about." I just don't get it. Anyway.
Yeah. I was talking about this with someone the other day, actually, and it's really interesting because if you look at, for example, the aviation sector, when they have incidents, what's really remarkable is in the air crash investigations, it's really transparent. And both the manufacturer of the aircraft and the airline that operates the aircraft really hold their hands up. They have a no-fault culture as well. So they don't blame pilots or engineers or whatever. They're looking at the processes and what led to this mistake happening. And what I really like about it is it's super transparent about what happened. And so they can learn as an industry and improve. And that's one thing we do really badly in cyber, I would say, is we kind of very much like, let's just pretend it didn't happen, or we'll only admit to the mistakes that weren't really mistakes, and we can say those were our mistakes. But the proper mistakes, we're going to keep locked in that box over there.
Yeah. The important thing is like learning from it.
Yeah.
And this is why I don't use previous examples as a stick to beat up companies. I always go on about Equifax, not as a stick to beat up the company, but it is a tremendous learning thing. Like, something so small could cause a company such significant harm. That's a learning experience. Let's not repeat that. Let's use it as a negative situation and turn it into positive, preventing other companies facing a similar thing. But yeah, we are round and round we go, facing the same issues.
And actually, I think if we look at the aviation sector and just look at Boeing for a second, right? So Boeing had the 737 MAX, which, let's be honest, was probably one of the worst corporate governance disasters of our lifetime, to be honest. It couldn't have looked worse or been worse in reality. But yeah, the way they actually ended up having to deal with it, own up to it, disclose things, fix things, was really responsible. And cooperation between Airbus and Boeing on it was really responsible. And no one lost their jobs over it. And I think that's actually the right decision, because if you start saying to people, if you make a mistake and we pull you up on it, you're going to lose your job, the chances of someone then being honest and transparent when they've made a mistake plummets. It's not in your interests to do that necessarily. But yeah, of all the things that have ever happened, that was probably one of the worst. Yeah.
The worst timing. Didn't that happen around the beginning of COVID?
I think, yeah, it wasn't great. I think the only one that I thought wasn't a cyber one either, but another really, really bad example of companies running themselves and doing really bad things was VW, when they put all of the defeat devices into the cars so that they were environmentally friendly because they were cheating the tests.
Dieselgate.
Exactly, yeah. That was also really terrible. But,
Yeah.
Share price is still holding, so we're all good.
But just going back to the Boeing thing, like, do you think it's also because the industry's pretty highly regulated?
Yeah.
Do you think that has a bearing? And should we, as the industry, also look to regulate some parts of security?
Well, I would argue that the financial services industry is highly regulated. I mean, in the UK, we've got the FCA and the PRA, both of whom are very, very proactive on financial services. Yet there's still a tendency to try and hide things where you can.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, the financial services sector is far from this idealistic beacon of corporate governance and morality that we can follow, right? So I'm not sure it's just that, but I think the advantage, it sounds a horrible thing to say, but I would say the advantage aviation has is that when something goes wrong, it goes catastrophically wrong.
Yeah.
Front page, catastrophic, huge image, crying people wrong. And so that probably is a catalyst for proactive action. Whereas with cyber, it doesn't make the front page pretty much ever, and you can kind of hide it.
Yeah, I think the only time we've seen that is like WannaCry. That's probably the closest that it's come to something like that. So it is. It basically, I think, where it's a loss of human life that it really becomes something that's, oh wow, which is tragic because loss of human life is not always direct. If I lose my money in that, I could become depressed, and there's things like suicide and that, which unfortunately happens. So there's still indirect things for loss of human life. But yeah, that unfortunately
it doesn't make a nice photo though for the front page of a newspaper, does it? Like, so
yeah,
that's the thing, I think.
I will say though, things are slowly getting better. They are getting there. It's just incredibly slow, like glacial. But positive, at least, the right direction. Better than going the other way. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I think within industry, so I work predominantly in financial services, not exclusively. And I would say that within the financial services bubble, they are quite communicative and they share quite a lot of information. That doesn't trickle outside of financial services, which is a bit of a problem. But at the moment, that's still an improvement upon where we were, which was everyone pretended they didn't have a problem.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows where we'll be in 20 years' time, which is interesting.
Still blaming DNS.
Yeah, yeah. It's always the network fault. Sorry, Brian, if you're listening. I apologize, but it is always the network's fault. So the last one we have on our list is how security in a company carries over into your personal lives. This one is something I feel quite vocal about because things like phishing attempts are very polarized in our industry. We've got people like, okay, it's a good exercise, and others are like, it's the worst thing ever. And I kind of like on the side that I think we need them. So my view of phishing attempts is they are there as a measurement. So are your controls working? Are people paying attention? Is your training working? Are people able to spot these things? Your tooling working? All that kind of stuff. It's kind of like doing a pen test, right? We don't just do pen tests to find vulnerabilities. We do pen tests to also find that any processes and that we have in place are doing what they're supposed to be doing. But then on the other side, we have people saying, well, technology should solve this. And I don't disagree, but the problem I have with that is if we now suddenly throw technology at this problem, we're teaching people, okay, it's fine. Click on the link. Go fill in whatever box. It's fine. Don't worry. Something will be there to pick you up. In your business, that may be the case. But what happens in the personal life? They now become accustomed to this. Okay, I'm just going to go click on whatever and fill in whatever box. They're not going to have that protection in their own personal environment. It can be things like passwords and MFA and single sign-on and that. Great in a corporate environment, you control that. You have the knowledge, the expertise to help with that. But when it goes to someone's personal lives, how does that then translate?
I'm probably on the fence, I would say, about phishing simulations. I think in principle, they are one of many metrics that is useful if done correctly. Most of the time, they're not done correctly. And so therefore, I think they are devoid of all value. And they're basically a bit of an ego trip for the security team, which I hate. My biggest thing, actually, which links into this, my biggest bugbear is culture questionnaires. where they are going to assess your cultural maturity by asking your staff a series of questions that they self-assess. I literally think it's useless because it's subjective. So no one's going to sit there and go, I am the weakest link in this company. Hands down, I am the weakest link. Like they should fire. No one's going to say that. So it's completely subjective, firstly. Secondly, each person is answering it obviously subjectively. So you can't even compare them like for like within an organization or a team. So that's the second thing. And then thirdly, I sort of think, with them, what are you actually achieving from it? What insight are you getting? Okay, so your staff don't understand what credential stuffing is. Now what? Like, it's just, the problem is, I think, with a lot of these things regarding culture, if they worked, we would be seeing results.
So, playing devil's advocate with a lot of these things around culture training, they're often compliance. I could get on my soapbox about compliance. Don't get me started about compliance.
Compliance is Sean's crypto, is my crypto, but for him, basically.
Compliance, could rant about that all day. But it is an important thing to make that often compliance requires it. So therefore, a company doesn't have a option. They have to do it because it's mandatory. Whether it's right or wrong or useful or not, irrelevant. The compliance says you have to do it. You don't have a choice in it. And I think that's where often we face a lot of issues, especially from a security team point of view. I've been in there where you agree it is absolutely crap. I hate this. It doesn't make any sense, but the compliance says we have to do it. We have to do it. So now you have the security team agreeing it's crap, but you telling them, well, you have to do it. So I think that also then gives the mixed messaging to people. Or if the security team don't believe in that, why should I believe in it? What else do they not believe in? And I shouldn't believe in.
But I also think that, like, the problem with some of these things is they can be gamified. They can be sort of gamed, sorry, not gamified. So instead of actually doing it properly, you can sort of do it a little bit, and then next time we have to do it, we'll do it a bit better, so it looks like we've made progress. But there's no objective test to actually saying there is progress. And actually, in a lot of these due diligence questions, I mean, I get loads of them. They never read them. People never read what's on the due diligence questionnaire. So it doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense.
And that's why I don't like compliance, because it says you will provide training. All right. Is it a one slide PowerPoint slide? What goes in the training? Just you will provide training. So there's no clear guidance of what that actually entails.
Mm-hmm.
And often companies are under also resourcing and that constraints. So they're just going to try to do the bare minimum. They're just going to do tick. And this is why I hate compliance. It's a checkbox exercise.
Yeah.
We're doing these things to meet compliance. And a lot of the stuff in compliance is actually good from a security point of view. But the way it's phrased or the way people approach it is wrong, because it's literally a tick box exercise.
Yeah.
And these things shouldn't be done for compliance reasons. They should be done anyway. But because it's compliance, that's where people view it as compliance tick. I'm just going to do it to meet these requirements. One of the things I think around training and awareness, and this where I'm a really big fan of, is approaching it from a more human, personal level. And by that, I mean, that's passwords. Teaching people to use a password manager in their own personal lives. Teaching how to use MFA in their own personal lives. Getting them to protect their own personal lives. They're going to care about their own personal bank account far more than the company bank account, or most people will. They're going to care about their personal email far more than the corporate email, and so on and so forth. So my thinking behind it is they're going to have a lot more attachment to those things. They'll have a lot more likelihood, which ironically is kind of contradicting that term that we said earlier, where people are like, "Oh, I'm not going to update and that." But this is why I think targeting them on that personal level, you have better traction. And then by them doing that, they then bring that into their business world because it becomes habits, culture, that type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think that some of the other things that I fall out about with the way culture is delivered at organizational level is it's not necessarily driven by the threat. And what you're really needing to do is develop policies, procedures, training, technical controls that respond to the threat that you face, right? Which is different for each organization. And they don't necessarily do that. They don't even do it on a broader level. So, for example, in the Conti leaks, we saw discussion from Conti that talked about phishing and techniques they used, talked about how it was really important to make sure that the employees didn't know or didn't suspect they'd done something wrong, so they never reported it. Because if they report it, it's a problem for Conti. So that really highlights to us the importance of getting people to report any mistake, right? But we didn't look at that and think, this is what they were doing, so how are we going to respond to the threat? We just carried on with what we'd always done. And so for me, everything that we do in cyber has to keep coming back to what's the threat? Who are the threat actors? How are they operating? And are we defending and building resilience to match that, as opposed to just inventing things that we think is a big thing?
But like how AI and machine learning is going to take over all our jobs and solve everything.
Or like to be honest, right, I'm going to go on a rant here, the whole Wi-Fi in cafes thing, right? The big hill to die on for security people. Realistically, of all the threats that we face at organizational level, is that in the top 10? Is that in the top 10 on your threat model? Hackers sitting in a nearby Starbucks?
Could be
No.
me with my pineapple.
Yeah, but even then, I mean, realistically, what are you going to get that's so valuable that you couldn't get from a phishing email?
So there was actually a case of a hotspot being compromised, and I think it was in Brazil. They compromised it to then install crypto mining software on everyone that joined it. I I get what you're saying. The chances are low. So a lot of the stuff, right, it is kind of like to your threat model and your tolerance for risk in it. I put a seatbelt on every time I drive to the shops. I've not needed it once, touch wood, or the word, but I've done it thousands and thousands and thousands of times for that one time that I do need it. So that's where I look at things like VPN and that. Like, you may not, you probably never ever need it, right? But there could be that one time,
Yeah,
and
but
that's the
don't you
way I
think that
viewed.
I do agree, right? If we're living in an idealistic world where we could get people, the normies, as Dan Card calls them, to do everything, then I totally agree that needs to be in there. But assuming they have the bandwidth to do like 3 things, would that be in your top 3? For me, it really wouldn't. It would be passwords, etc., right? And we're not getting them to do that. So my argument would be, let's go for the things that are going to make the biggest difference first. And that probably, given the need for physical proximity, is not going to be that.
I think where a lot of this is also stemming from is if we look at the way the things have changed. Um, the biggest change is around TLS adoption. If
Yes.
we're talking 10 years ago, most sites were over HTTP. And from there, you've got things not just of stealing information, but also tampering
Yes.
and putting malicious things and all that. So maybe that's where a lot of this stems from. You'll find like the padlock and those kinds of things. Rotate your passwords every 90 days. These are all older legacy type thinking and modified. So I do agree with the view that chances of that's happening very low, and there are more important things that people should worry about. But it also comes down to your risk level. I can personally, I initially connect to a hotspot, connect, and then I switch over to VPN. Just because I had the VPN, it's there. I want to be safe. That's fine. That's me. My risk tolerance is going to be different from yours. It's the same. It's the same thing as like, oh wait, are you ready for it? I'm using a wireless keyboard.
No, you're so vulnerable right now. Hack
It
him.
gets
Someone hack
worse.
him now.
I'm using a wireless mouse. And joking aside, like there was, I don't know if it's still a thing, but people are like, oh, you can't use a wireless keyboard. No.
Yeah.
Maybe an office in a very busy city center, maybe, but I'm in the middle of the sticks. If someone's sitting outside my house trying to sniff my wireless keyboard,
You're big trouble for other reasons, to be honest.
yeah, exactly. I have bigger things to worry about.
You do. And this is a bit like the Pegasus thing, right? So obviously no one thinks that Pegasus malware is a good, well, no, that's not true. There are people who clearly think Pegasus malware is a good thing. Most of us do not think Pegasus malware is a good thing. But realistically, the chances of us as individuals being targeted is probably pretty low. It's not zero, and it's definitely something we ought to be careful of, and definitely something we need to be aware of, blah, 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 blah. But are we likely to be the key targets of interest for some foreign governments? I think that's probably ego if you say you are, because I am definitely not that interesting.
If they spot on my phone, they would just like just go and take his phone away from him because this is boring us to death. Please,
it's just sad. It's just so sad. Her phone makes me want to cry.
I can't. We can't unsee the boring stuff that Sean posts online and that. But yeah, it is true. Those types of things are very targeted. It's the same as like the whole TikTok debate that's been going on. I do see where it's coming from, but again, those are going to be very targeted. It's your defense in numbers, so to speak. You a tiny thing in amongst millions and billions of people. No one's going to care about your food images. Like, oh, you cook whatever ravioli, you had pineapple on pizza for dinner.
There would be one nation that would care about that.
North Korea.
No, a way worse one. Way more violent.
But the point is, like, people post like food things and stuff like that. We saw this even when Snowden things came about. Like everyone panicked. Oh, there's government spying on me and that. Yes, but the chances of someone sitting at the desk reading your whole life story is almost non-existent. They were looking for very targeted keywords, targeted people, all that kind of thing. And the same as these nation states. I think a more worrying thing is nation states using that to then disinformation.
Yeah.
Trying to seed not only that, but also sowing division.
Yeah.
I think many people view disinformation as just getting one message across, but I think just as dangerous is trying to sow that division so you get the two conflicting sides essentially tearing themselves apart.
Yeah. And the Russians are very good at that. And actually, if you go, because this is what normal people do when they're not doing updates, we go on to Russian Telegram and we look at Russian Telegram, Russian YouTube to see what messages they're putting out. And it's really interesting because I think there's a lot of people who think they're really good at spotting Russian propaganda, but it turns out you're just really good at spotting the Russian propaganda that they want you to spot on Twitter, because that's not where it is. And the stuff that's really going out is actually so good that sometimes I look at it knowing full well it's Russian propaganda, and I question myself as I watch it, and I'm like, oh, this is really good. So it's very, very clever. I do advocate going and checking out Russian YouTube and Russian Telegram because it's next level.
So do that after you update your devices, preferably, please. Thank you. But no, it is an interesting thing. But yeah. So those were all the topics that we had. We've been about an hour or so. So, um, I don't know if there's any final thoughts that you had, like around
Or like if
TikTok
you
or
have like
anything.
a really, really difficult, hard, horrible question for Sean, now would be a good time to submit that.
Sorry, I gotta go.
He doesn't.
It's
He doesn't have anything to do. He's lying.
uh, look at that, no questions. Oh well, what a shame.
Disappointed, guys. Come equipped with really horrible questions for Sean next time.
Come on, you got Google Bard, you've got Chat GPT. Surely those things can come up with a question. We're going to tell them the story of Google Bard being a bit arrogant and cocky.
Yeah, we do. That was hilarious.
So we asked Google Bard, how far would I travel if I did 70 miles per hour reverse in my car? So something to that effect. And Google Bard's like, no, you can't do that. You break your car. Engine's not geared towards driving that far in reverse. So you travel 0 miles an hour or 0 miles. I'm like, wow, thanks. Just, yeah.
So then we asked
fucking
it more.
dick.
We were basically, Sean was helping me test Google Bard against ChatGPT, and ChatGPT was just running error messages on some of these things. And Google Bard was just getting sassier and sassier and sassier with us with its answers. And eventually it was just like, well, obviously you can't do that because of this. And we're just like, all right, my God. So it was quite hilarious because it was basically telling Sean and I that we were idiots and it wasn't going to answer our question because we'd asked stupid questions.
Yeah, Google Bard, you're a dick.
Not sponsored by Google.
You even lost like, okay, well, when a train travels backwards for 70 miles an hour, how far does it travel? 0.
Oh, look, there's a question for Sean.
Yeah. I despise math, so no.
I didn't realize we could do that. We could just say no to the question. I like that. I like that.
A to the power of n plus b to the power n equals c to the power n when n. Oh, no. This will give me nightmares from school. I think I was at school when I did this. No. Sorry. No. Wait. We have things for this now.
Chatbots. He's going to run it through chatbot, isn't he? Through ChatGPT.
No, I'd never do such a thing, would I? Never, ever, ever. I'm just thinking. Oh, jeez, I'm thinking it's just difficult.
Not even a good actor.
Oh,
to be honest.
that's what it is. It's Fermat's last theorem. Yeah. So yeah.
It's not even impressive.
It's
acting.
also very highly
bad
technical.
acting. Really bad.
You'd say I would never job.
For the record, next time we need to ask him a question that relates to something that happened after September 2021, because ChatGPT is trained on data sets only up to September 2021. So anything after that, it can't answer. So that's what we have to do. We have to think of recent trivia questions.
There's a flaw in that plan.
Do you have access to Bard now?
Yes.
Damn it. I'll come up with a new plan.
Actually, there is
hack Sean. Okay, can someone hack Sean before the next podcast, because it would make a lot of things easy.
The headshot actually did ask a question. Have I ever fallen for crypto scam?
Can we vote on this?
Kind of. So there is a thing on my blog. I wrote about it. I was amazingly, I had like 16 Bitcoin or something like that, just gifted to me on a platter. There it is. So I signed up. I did it, and I was like, oh, cool, 16 Bitcoin or whatever it was. I forgot the exact. It was enough to go, this is pretty sizable chunk. Not like I'm going to retire and be Ferraris and that data breach list. Never like But yeah. So anyway, did it? And I tried to draw it out, and it's like, no, you need to deposit some. So I was like, okay, well, it kind of makes sense. You want people to come. So I gave it. It was a tiny amount. It was a small amount. So I was like, okay, it's gonna be a gamble. Either way, probably lose it. And yep, no, it didn't work. Oh, now you need to deposit this amount. I'm like, nah, not gonna happen. Bye. And then stupidly, I didn't think to actually check the Bitcoin address. Good, it had nothing in it. It was actually a dud. But that's all on my blog post. That's all there. If you want to read up how kind of what scam in crypto.
Happens to a lot of people, I think.
Read more on my RP. My RP address is 127.0.0.1. You're welcome.
Someone needs to get him to open Google Maps. I've heard that's how you hack everybody. You can just put malware in every single Google map. If you know where that comes from, you know.
We're not going to talk about that person.
We're not. But just be careful with Google Maps, apparently.
Yeah. So that's out to get you. They might just point a laser or something at your house.
I haven't got a crypto mistake or scam that I fell for, but I did do something really stupid a while back that's quite funny and I think is worth a story in itself. So I decided what I was going to do was make... Oh, when you say it out loud, it's going to sound so stupid. So I decided I was going to make this specific electronic device, which I shall not name for reasons of legality. So I made it, but my maths, like Sean's maths, is absolutely terrible. So my calculations were way off. And the amount of power this device emitted was quite substantial and unexpected. And so it fried all of the electronic devices in the vicinity of my house. And I have this very funny video where I'm trying to video turning it on with my phone, and you could see like the last minutes of the iPhone. It just fried everything.
Is it like the movies or the things where it just turn it on and it's the whole neighborhood?
It was exactly like that. And I just thought, oh, Lisa, you need to get a little bit better at maths because this is an expensive mistake.
You could have had a comeback. And you said, I've developed a weapon, a hacking device. Just go and turn it on and watch everything.
Would be really useful on trains when you've got someone sitting behind you on a train and they're playing, I don't know, whatever it is on their phone, but on speakers. It's not even going through headphones. Just turn this massive device on and just nuke the entire electrical.
There's one slight problem to that thing though. You're on a train that has electricity that's used to drive it.
It's not massively targeted or directional. It just sort of destroys everything.
The train comes to stop. Me?
Yeah, it's not me, the woman with the massive electrical device.
What were you actually trying to do with the electrical device?
It's a long story, but I just wanted to do projects, and it turns out I shouldn't be allowed to do that.
So another story. Don't give electronics to Lisa. Don't give maths to either of us. Don't let Sean become your crypto advisor.
No, there's a lot of caveats to the advice we give on this podcast.
This podcast was proudly sponsored by
EMP Forte. Someone's written in the chat.
Yep. It's EMP Forte.
Yeah.
Next thing, we just need a logo. So if anyone's a good graphic designer, let's design a logo.
Yeah. I can be EMP Forte and he can be Crypto Scam Sean. That makes you sound cool, though. It makes you sound like you're running crypto scams. I just sound like a terrorist.
Yeah, because I would go, well, great. United States border control, like, yeah. Oh, yeah, it says, yeah, crypto scammer. Oh, great.
It literally
Fuck's
says it
sake.
on your t-shirt, dude. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, no, I don't know if anyone's got any other questions or anything else that I want to bring up. Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
been
see there were
good.
like 2 channels of chat.
Yeah, there's 3 actually. There were some from LinkedIn. There were some from. Oh, you mean at the top? Sorry, this is a new app. We're still trying to get used to it. No idea how it works because technology is hard, and technology people can't work technology.
Yeah, no, we can't. We hate it. Oh yeah,
Especially.
Slido for questions would be a good idea. I like that idea.
Okay. Yeah. We'll look to that next time. I think that's yeah, it's a really good idea. Things, yeah, but yeah, we'll look to that. Thanks to everyone who joined, chimed in, been great. Big thank you to Lisa for her time and joining in. And the good loss around our our careers that we'll never have in crypto and electronics and all that.
Never. It's never going to happen for us, I don't think.
Well, you probably have more of a chance, right? So you can actually say, "Yeah, I developed this weapon." I can't go like,
Yeah, because
"Well,
that sentence always ends really well. That never puts you on a no-fly list. Everyone like, I just developed this weapon. That always ends so positively.
yeah, I suppose so." Well,
I do think we need to launch we do need to launch a cybersecurity coin, I think.
yes, we'll have to come up with a logo
And a
and a
name.
name.
I think it would be hilarious.
If anyone's got any ideas, let us know.
And any other topics you want us to discuss next time, let us know.
Yeah, definitely. We'll try to keep this a kind of monthly thing, so the first Wednesday of every month, and see how it goes from there. But yeah, again, thank you for everyone who has come along, supported us, listened in, chimed in. Really appreciate it. And again, thank you to Lisa for her time.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Catch you all later. Oh, and have a great long weekend because it's a 4-day weekend.
It is, yes.
Sorry if you're not in the UK. Sorry. But yeah, have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.